Hey guys, what's going on? It's Mark with Spiguyver Backpacking. Today, I'm coming to you from out on the trail. I've got my son out with me. We're out on the Foothills Trail in South Carolina. And I figured what better place to talk about suspensions than out on the trail where we're actually using suspension. So this is episode 3 in the Hammock how-to series. And today, it's all about suspension. So, what is suspension? Well, suspension is this part. It is what takes your hammock and suspends it into the trees, hence the term suspension. I've got Dylan over here. We'll take a look at his setup. I've got my setup here, and I've got a couple of alternate setups that we'll talk about, that I will show you. And so let's just go ahead and get started. So once you've figured out what hammock you want, you need to figure out how you're going to hang your hammock. And so the suspension that you choose is what's going to keep you up in the air. Now, there are a lot of different kinds out there, but the two most common kinds that you'll find almost every hammock vendor either offers with or offers as an accessory, an option when you buy, are Whoopie slings with tree huggers or cinch buckles. So those two are probably the most common ones that you will find out there. Now, I don't have any cinch buckles, but I have Beetle buckles from Dutch that come with the Chameleon, and I do have some Whoopie slings. Now, there are a couple different ways that people use their Whoopie slings. Now, you can either use it with a continuous loop already on your hammock. We talked a little bit about the continuous loop, but it is the end piece, that end loop that goes through the end, the sewn channel of the gathered end of your hammock, and the suspension can attach to. Now, if you don't want to go that route, you can run the non-adjustable end of a Whoopie through the gathered end and then lark's head it on itself and go out and have the Whoopie sling be your suspension. So hey guys, today we are talking about suspension, and there are a lot of different suspension types out there that you can hang your hammock from. Now, this is probably the one spot where the differences are pretty big. They all do the same thing. They keep your hammock up in the tree, but the different types go on different ways, connect to your hammock different ways, and really, different ones give a little bit different flexibility to how you can hang your hammock. So let's take a look at some of the different types that we have. Probably one of the most basic types out there is the kind you'll find coming with a lot of the Eno, the Hammock, the Ciroc. These ones happen to come with the Ciroc hammock that I've got. And what it is it's just a webbing strap that has loops sewn into it. So it's really two straps of webbing sewn together to make loops. And then you take your carabiner and you attach it wherever you need to get the correct hang on your hammock. So if it was attached here, it's a little bit too tight on the hammock. So you've got to find where you get that nice 30-degree hang. Right now that's a little bit more shallow than 30 degrees. And so you come down and you pick the right one. Now the problem with this is that these loops are sewn 6 inches apart. So your adjustments are not infinite. They're 6 inches apart. So every 6 inches is where you can go with that. Now, they do make some. Dutch Wear Gear actually sells ones that have 3-inch sewn loops. So it has a little bit more adjustment to it. But this is about the most basic one that you can get. At the end, there's a loop, just the end loop that's sewn. And so you just circle it around the tree. You could use another carabiner, but really it's unnecessary. You can go ahead and just use it this way, connect it up. It's a quick, easy way. Downside is it is pretty heavy. It's one of the heavier options out there because instead of just a single layer of webbing, you've got 2 layers and then all of the sewn loops. So you've got double, triple stitching all the way down through everywhere that a loop is put in. So it does make it a little bit heavier, and you've got to carry carabiners. Now, these are not the lightest carabiners. These are the ones that came with the Ciroc hammock that I've got, but they work. This is what I use primarily in my backyard, just because it's simple, it's quick, and it stands up to the weather pretty well. So here is that webbing strap system, and let's see how you put this one up. So you've got on either end a loop. So you just use whichever one you want, open it up, so you go around the tree, and then slide the whole rest of the strap with the carabiner through. Then you pick whichever loop you need it to be on, grab the end of your hammock, and make the attachment point, and there you go. Check that your hang angle is about a 30-degree angle. Like I said, you can use your thumb and forefinger, and when you put that up, if it's a roughly going across there, which this one is, you're pretty close to a 30-degree angle. The next thing that you want to check as we turn and look this way is that the ridge line is relatively tight. Now you don't want it super tight, but you want it at least tight enough. So if right now it was loose, we would go further up on the webbing strap to achieve what you see here. Now if you're a fan of hardware, Dutch wear gear offers a lot of different hardware that you can use. So on the ends of this, I have Dutch clips. These are titanium Dutch clips. And what this allows you to do is, while this has a loop, it can be tedious at times. And, you know, if you've got a long strap, which this one is pretty long, going back through this and pulling it all through can take a little bit of time. So if you get something like this little clip, what you can do is just simply go around the tree, slide the webbing through it, and now you're set. Now you want to make sure that the piece of hardware is on the side so that the line coming from the tree is relatively straight. You do not want it on this side where you're putting a lot of pressure on that hardware. Otherwise, when you get in, you could hit the ground. So you set that up, and this one has what's called a Beetle buckle. So this is your Beetle buckle, and for me, it's set up this way, so that the continuous loop, which this is a continuous loop, the continuous loop of the hammock goes over it like this and locks it down. Now, to make adjustments, you grab it, you put your thumb down here, these two little wings you put your fingers on, and you can slide it down or make the adjustment and pull it up. Now right now it is adjusted pretty loose. If I come over here and I grab my hammock, I can put my hammock body on here, but if I was to let go of it the way it is right now, it would hit the ground. So I'm going to make that 90 degree, and I'm just gonna make the adjustment until I'm about where I want to be. Check it. My ridge line is taut. I'm pretty close to a 30 degree, maybe a little bit over, so I can loosen it up a little bit. Still have a pretty good ridge line. You can take a look over there and see the ridge line, and it is nice and taut across here, not tight, but when I get in it, I want to check it again. So that is the connection point here. As you can see, it wraps over, locks down this upper one, and you just simply turn it 90 degrees to the webbing in order to make the adjustments up or down. The continuous loop is there, and here you can see what I'm talking about on the tree. You want this side that's going through the hardware to be a very low angle. You don't want a lot of pressure on this hardware because you don't want it to break. If this breaks, you're going to come down. So one of the most common of any of the types out there is the Whoopie sling suspension. So this right here is a Whoopie sling suspension. And what makes it a Whoopie sling is this section right here. And this is called the berry. So what happens is you have one line, one strand that comes down, and it continues. So this is the strand that continues down, and it loops on the end. Let me tighten this up so we can get it all in the shot and show you exactly what's going on here. So like I said, you have this one on the top, and it goes straight across, and then it comes back through, and you bury its line upon itself through this section. This 6-inch section right here has a buried line. Now, on this end, it has a hook. This is a Whoopie hook. This one is from Dutch. You don't have to get a Whoopie hook. You don't have to use Whoopie hooks. The way that I use mine, I have a tree strap. This is just a polyester tree strap with a loop at the end, and then I've taken the loop that's at the end of my Whoopie sling and lark's headed it on so that it's there and it's tight, it's not going anywhere. Then I take this end, so this will be attached to a tree. This end will come down and attach to my continuous loop on my hammock. From there, if I need to make adjustments, you can simply grab the bottom of the berry, pinch it, and pull the line through to extend it further out. Or if you come to the top of that berry, pinch it, you can pull the line up to make that loop smaller. So let's see how that looks actually on a hammock. So the next suspension we're going to talk about is a tree hugger with a Whoopie sling, lark's headed onto one of the loops. So a tree hugger has two loops in it. It has loops on either end. Now you could attach another Dutch clip to this or use a carabiner to make it a quicker install. So if you had a carabiner, you would simply have it on here and then clip it to this end, which makes it very quick. Now, if you had a Dutch clip, it would be the same as what you saw me do with the Beetle buckle system. But since I don't have either of those on here, I'm going to open the loop and slide the entire suspension through it. Okay? This one has a Whoopie hook on the end of it. I'm going to make sure it all slides through, loosen it up, adjust it to the height I think it needs to be. Now for this one, your adjustment is a little bit limited because I went around the tree and the suspension itself doesn't start until here, and then you've got to come all the way down. So you've got this lead part, which is not adjustable. You've got the berry, which is not adjustable. So here would be the first place you would be able to connect it. And so we would be all the way down here. You can see how far away from the tree that is. So sometimes what you have to do is go around the tree multiple times before you go through the loop. Puts a little bit less pressure on the tree as well. So for example, on this one, if I hook up the hammock, it is way too loose right now. Let's go ahead and adjust the camera and give you guys a better angle of this. Okay, as you can see right here, this is way too loose. So if I adjust all the way, that is about as tight as you can go. I'm still way too low on this side. You can see just how droopy the suspension on the other side is. So I really need this up probably like here. And that's a lot of slack there. So what I can do is I'll disconnect the hammock again. So here's the berry. Now, in order to make adjustments, you've got the line that runs through the middle of the berry, and it comes out, you can see it comes out on the top side right there, and on the bottom side you can figure out which one goes in the middle. Then you grab it and you kind of pinch it and you pull the line through. So if I pull it through this way, it gets longer. Once it's through, if you, what's called milking the berry, just kind of pull it so that it elongates. Now it's not going to move. To shorten it, you simply grab this side that goes through, pinch the berry, and slide it through. It's actually very simple. But because we need it to be a little bit higher, what we're going to do is wrap it around the tree at least twice. We'll see what that gives us. So there's still room. Let's go ahead and go a third time around. 3 times around the tree, then through the loop. Now we've got the berry up here. So the finish point is here. So this is the shortest. If we wanted to pull it all the way in, this is how far up it could go. Now this is going to meet our needs at this time, but to get to it, you know, it'd be pretty tight pulling the hammock up here. So I'm going to pinch the berry, pull it down so that I've got a lot of room to play with here. I'm going to pick up the hammock, connect it to that Whoopie hook. Now we're back to about where we were before with it only wrapped around once, but this was the full extent of its adjustment. Now I can grab this side, pinch it, pull the line through and make the adjustment to get it about where I want it. So that's how you do it. Now I'm going to sit in it and check out, with a little bit of weight in here, how's the tension on it, and that looks pretty good. If this was still loose, I would tighten it up a little more on this end. Because I'm closer to the tree on this side, I'd use the side that's further apart and make the adjustments there. To do that, simply pinch the berry and pull. If I want to loosen it because I've tightened it up too much now, grab the exit side, pinch that berry, and just pull. Very simple adjustment and a lot of adjustment there. You can make very minor adjustments of, you know, a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 1 inch, 3 inches, whatever. You're not stuck with the size of the loops like you were with the webbing straps. So now let's take a look at another option. So this is one of my favorite options. I used this one for quite a while, and it consists of 2 parts. So this one is a 7-foot Kevlar tree hugger, and the reason it's a tree hugger and not just a tree strap is that it has loops on both ends. A tree strap only has a loop on one end, a tree hugger has loops on both ends. And to this tree hugger, I have attached mule tape. Now mule tape is very pliable, very easy to play with, to use to make knots in and untie knots. It doesn't stick. It's very very pliable. It's very easy to work with. Now because this is a 7-foot hugger, if I had big trees like some of the ones you may see down behind me, it can wrap around those and not get on the mule tape. Now on the smaller trees like the one we've been using here, you're gonna have to wrap it around multiple times. So let's take a look at how I would use this one. So just like any other tree hugger, it's going to go around the tree, and you want it to be pretty flat against the tree. For this one, because it's 7 feet, I'm going to have to go around the tree several times. And you can see that this is just a longer process. I mean, it's not quite as quick as something with the hardware, but this is a much lighter option. The Kevlar is very light, the mule tape is very light. So I've gone around 3 times. There's still a lot left over. I'm going to go around a 4th time. The problem is once you start going around this many times, that mule tape is wrapped around the bottom of the tree pretty good. And so it's going to take a little bit of unwrapping it to get it all the way through. So if I try and pull it through right now, well, because of the mule tape being wrapped around the bottom of the tree, it's not happening. So unwind it. Now I can come through. Now this one has no hardware, nothing on the mule tape to attach it. So how are we going to do this one? Well, this one I like to use what's called a becket hitch. Becket hitch is an easy to tie, easy to undo, easy to adjust knot that I prefer. So let's take a pretty good look at this one. Okay, so I've got the end of my hammock here, the continuous loop, and I've got my mule tape that's coming from the tree. So I put it through, pull it all the way through so that I've got just the mule tape running through that continuous loop. Then I adjust it to where I want it, and I kind of pinch the end and I make a little loop. So I've got it looped completely outside, and I make a loop. Then I take it through the other side and pull it through. Then I just make the adjustment. Now it doesn't have to be this big of a loop. I usually don't do anywhere near this size loop. It's usually about like that. So I've got this loop here, and it is on the continuous loop and not back on the mule tape itself. And so that's there. It's tied. I can sit in this thing. It's not going anywhere. Now if I had it too loose, I simply grab my continuous loop so that the hammock doesn't fall, pull it out, tighten it a little bit, pinch it so that it's where I want it, make my loop, come through the other side with the loop, and pull it tight. And now I've got it adjusted there. When it's time to leave camp, grab the loose end. And one of the cool things is you'll hear people talk about drip lines, and that's just so that if this gets wet, if water is, so you'll have your tarp that'll come out maybe to here, rain will be coming down. If it runs down, it needs to have something to follow down so that it doesn't continue on and get your hammock wet. So this becomes a natural water break, and the water will flow down this line. You can also make a second knot after it, just to make sure if any does get by there, it's got another knot. So to strike it when you're ready to take down camp, just to show you how easy this is, one hand, pull it, it's now loose. If I was to let go of this now, it all falls down. And that's how simple that one is. I really like the becket hitch, very easy to adjust, very easy to set up. And the absolute lightest setup I have are these Dyneema tree straps. The reason this is a tree strap and not a tree hugger is it has a loop in one end, no loop on the other end. Now you notice I have absolutely no hardware on this, and this is what makes this one so light, very versatile. So I'll just take that loop, because it's a tree strap and not a tree hugger, and the way that I use it, I only have to go around any tree one time. So this size tree, bigger tree, smaller tree, one time around it, and then I've got the line coming down from the tree. So we're going to use this one just like we use the mule tape. So I'm going to go through my continuous loop, pull it until it's where I want it, make a loop, pull that through, becket hitch, done. Hammock hump. Very, very easy. A little bit harder to pull through than the mule tape, especially after you've been laying in it, but still a little bit of tug and you can make it work, and then make any adjustments you need to. Say that was too tight the way I had it before, bang, done. I can get in the hammock now, put the weight on it, completely trust it. You can see that the continuous ridge line is a little bit loose, so now I strike it, pull it tighter, redo the knot, get back in, recheck, and that continuous ridge line is perfect. That simple, guys. That simple. So here is another way to attach your continuous loop to that line. Now this could be used on this one, which is the Dyneema, or on the mule tape just as well. So what I've done is I've used a Marlin spike hitch. I've just used a twig here from the floor of the forest I'm in the woods here, and just use that as my toggle. Now you'll notice that the continuous loop is on the knot and not on the toggle. If you do it on the toggle, it's going to put too much pressure on the outside wings and it's going to snap when you get in it. It's just too much weight. But putting it here, all it's going to do is tighten that knot around that spike hitch. Very easy to tie and very easy to release. So for the trip today, we set up both of the hammocks with two sets of suspension, two different types of suspension on each one. So I have the Beetle buckle suspension system with a tie Dutch clip on the Polypro webbing. And if we move over to this end, we have the Myers Tech Dyneema in the 1-inch webbing, and then it's becket hitched on. And then over here on this one, we have the 7-foot Kevlar tree huggers with 15 feet of, actually, I believe it's 12 feet of mule tape. And the mule tape comes from anti-gravity gear. And it comes down and it's becket hitched onto the continuous loop. And if we walk down to this end, if you look underneath here, we have a Whoopie sling suspension with a tie Whoopie hook and a 5-foot tree hugger on this tree. Shows that you can use different types together and that there's no one way that's better than another. It's just different. So, for example, if you're into using different hardware and you want a quick setup that way, you can use something like cinch buckles or Beetle buckles. There are also spiders and several other things that you can get from Dutchware. Now, Dutchware gear does have a lot of really cool tie bits that you can add to your suspension setup just to ease the setup and make it just a little bit easier. I will say that there are lots of different ways that people set up their suspension. Like I had mentioned before, cinch buckles are one of the easiest, or one of the ones that comes with a lot of suspensions, and is one that a lot of people use. Now, a lot of times the buckles themselves will be on the continuous loop, and then you'll have a webbing strap that comes down and goes through it, and then a lot of people either use a clip like this or a carabiner to attach it to the tree. Now, the one thing that I dislike about that system, and about when people use Whoopie slings directly attached to their hammock, is that if you are in a rainy situation, you can see right now I have the tarps in the snakeskins up over both of the hammocks, but you can see that they don't cover the suspension. So all of the suspension will be getting wet. When you get up in the morning and you pack up camp, all of that webbing, if you are leaving it attached or have it attached to your continuous loop and you pack it in with your hammock, now all that wet webbing is in with your hammock. Now, if you're only doing overnight trips where you're just out for one night and you can get home and dry everything out, that's fine. But if you're doing multiple night trips, it's not a whole lot of fun to get to camp, open up your bag, and have a wet hammock. So my suggestion is work with continuous loops as your attachment point. Store your straps, all of your suspension, separately so that you aren't getting your hammock system wet. So like we've talked about, there are lots of different suspension systems out there. I've only shown you 5 or 6 different types that you can use, but there are a ton of different ones out there. Probably one of the more common ones, the cinch buckle system, I don't have. Like we talked about, the Whoopie sling system can be used a couple different ways, and I will reiterate that for me, I don't find it the right thing to do to have my suspension hooked to my hammock and left on all the time. Like the cinch buckle system, where the cinch buckles can be attached to the continuous loop and always on your hammock, a lot of people, because of that, leave the straps attached. Again, I will say, when it's raining out, those straps become wet, and when you pack it all together, now you have a wet hammock. And if it's still raining when you get to your next camp, getting into a wet hammock is not pleasant. You don't want, especially if you're using down that isn't treated with like a dry tech, you really don't want your insulation getting wet. And so I do everything I can to keep my stuff dry. And so I don't use the cinch buckle system. I don't use anything where I leave it attached. Some people use the Whoopie sling system with it in place of the continuous loop, and so a good portion of that suspension system hangs outside of their tarp and is subject to get wet. When you pack it all up, it's in with your hammock. Again, I don't want my hammock getting wet. So these are the types of systems I use, where it's attached to the tree and then you attach it to the continuous loop on your hammock. That continuous loop is larks headed through the sewn channel at the end of the hammock, and it works great. This is the way that I use my system. Find what works for you, make it happen, take a look at the different things I've shown you. There are different knots out there that people use. I like the becket hitch. Some people really love the Marlin spike hitch. I find the way that I do it has the most adjustability, most flexibility for me. You do you, I'll do me. I'm just giving you options, letting you know what's out there, and hopefully educating you so that when you go to make your purchase, when you go to make your decisions, it's an educated decision and you have an idea of what you're expecting, what you're getting. And when you read through and it says, you know, webbing strap, or it says cinch buckles, or it says Whoopie sling, you know what you're getting. Or you may opt to go completely away from that, select no suspension with your hammock, and get something like a Kevlar or a Dyneema tree strap, or a tree hugger and some Mule tape. Whatever works for you. If you really like the bling and the hardware, you can get some of the titanium bits to attach it and just really get geeky with it. I mean, there is so much stuff out there that you can do. There's spiders, there's different little pieces that you can use. I mean, there are so many out there. The options just abound. Guys, I hope you've gotten something out of this. Keep checking in. We're going to keep doing this. We're going to keep this hammock how-to series going. The next one will be insulation. How do you keep warm when you're out hanging? Following that will be tarps. How do you keep yourself dry? But come back, check us out for insulation. Keep that butt warm. You don't want cold butt syndrome. We're going to show you how to do that. Thanks, guys. I'll see you down the trail.